Every time you pop the hood and pour in a new bottle of oil, you're making a decision that either protects your engine for the next 200,000 miles or slowly wears it down from the inside. Mineral or synthetic? Let's actually find out what's happening inside your engine with each one. Let's start with mineral oil because it's the older technology and honestly, it's the reason engines have survived for over a century. Mineral oil comes straight from crude oil. Refineries pull it out of the ground, run it through a distillation process, and separate out the different weights of hydrocarbons until they get something usable as a lubricant. The problem is, crude oil is a mess. It's full of molecules of wildly different sizes and shapes, all mixed together. Even after refining, mineral oil still contains that irregular mix. Some molecules are long, some are short, some are branched in weird ways. Picture a jar full of rocks of every size and shape thrown in randomly. That's mineral oil at a molecular level. Now compare that to synthetic oil. Synthetic isn't just extra refined mineral oil, even though a lot of people think that. True synthetic oil is built, molecule by molecule in a lab. Manufacturers start with base oils like polyalphaolefins, PAOs for short, or in some high-end blends, esters. These aren't dug out of the ground and separated. They're engineered. Chemists take simpler molecules and chemically build them into a uniform, consistent structure. Every molecule ends up close to the same size and shape. Back to that jar analogy. Instead of random rocks, imagine a jar filled with identical marbles, perfectly uniform, stacked efficiently. That uniformity is the entire reason synthetic oil performs differently, and honestly, it's the single most important thing to understand in this whole video. So why does that molecular uniformity actually matter to your engine? It comes down to how oil behaves under stress, heat, and cold. Let's talk about viscosity first, because this is where the difference becomes obvious immediately. Viscosity is basically how thick or thin the oil is, and how much it resists flowing. Every oil has a viscosity index, which tells you how much the thickness changes as temperature changes. A high viscosity index means the oil stays more stable across temperature swings. Mineral oil, with all its random, irregular molecules, has a naturally lower viscosity index. That means it thickens up more dramatically when it's cold, and thins out more aggressively when it's hot. Synthetic oil, because of its uniform molecular structure, holds its viscosity far more consistently across that entire range. This shows up most obviously during cold starts, which is honestly one of the most dangerous moments for any engine. When you start your car on a freezing morning, that first few seconds before oil pressure builds up is when your engine is running with the least protection. Metal components are essentially grinding against each other with minimal lubrication until oil gets pumped through the system. With mineral oil, that startup period is worse because the oil is thicker and slower to flow when it's cold. It takes longer to reach every component that needs it. Synthetic oil flows faster in cold temperatures because its uniform molecules don't clump up and thicken the same way. That means quicker lubrication, less metal-on-metal contact, and less wear accumulating every single time you start your car in winter. Now let's flip to the other end, high heat, because this is where things get even more interesting. As engines run hot, especially under load, oil molecules start breaking down. This process is called oxidation, and it's basically oil reacting with oxygen and heat until its chemical structure degrades. Mineral oil, with its irregular molecular structure, is more chemically unstable to begin with. That instability means it oxidizes faster. As mineral oil oxidizes, it forms varnish and sludge, that thick, dark, gunky residue you've probably seen if you've ever opened an old valve cover. That sludge clogs oil passages, coats components, and reduces the oil's ability to actually lubricate anything. Synthetic oil resists oxidation significantly better because of its stable, engineered structure. It simply takes longer and higher temperatures before it starts breaking down the same way. This is also where additive packages come into the conversation, because oil isn't just base oil poured into a bottle. Every oil, mineral or synthetic, contains a package of additives, detergents to prevent buildup, dispersants to keep contaminants suspended instead of settling, anti-wear agents, viscosity modifiers, and antioxidants to slow down that oxidation process we just talked about. Here's the part most people don't realize. The base oil itself determines how well those additives can actually do their job. Synthetic's uniform structure allows additives to blend more evenly and stay suspended more effectively over the oil's lifespan. In mineral oil, that irregular structure makes it harder for additives to stay evenly distributed, so their effectiveness drops off faster. That's a big part of why two oils can list similar additives on the label, but perform completely differently inside your engine. Before we move on, there's a middle option a lot of people overlook: synthetic blends. These are exactly what they sound like: a mix of mineral base oil and synthetic base oil in the same bottle, usually somewhere around a 70-30 or 80-20 split. The idea is to capture some of synthetic stability without the full price tag. In practice, you do get some improvement over pure mineral oil, slightly better resistance to breakdown, slightly better cold flow, but you're also averaging in mineral oil's weaknesses at the same time. A blend won't oxidize as fast as pure mineral, but it also won't come close to matching full synthetic under real heat and stress. Think of it less as a genuine third category and more as a compromise, useful if budget is tight, but not a long-term substitute if your engine actually needs full synthetic protection. Here's a real-world way to picture the difference. Mechanics who do oil analysis and engine teardowns regularly will tell you the same thing. Pull a valve cover off an engine that's run mineral oil for 100,000 miles with average maintenance, and you'll usually find some degree of varnish buildup on the valve train, sometimes sludge pooling in low spots where oil flow is slower. Pull the valve cover off a comparable engine that's run full synthetic with proper intervals, and it's common to see components that still look nearly clean, sometimes with barely visible buildup. That's not a marketing claim. That's just what happens when oil resists oxidation instead of breaking down into gunk over thousands of heat cycles. The internal condition of an engine tells the real story that a bottle label never can. Now let's address the myth that refuses to die. Synthetic oil causes leaks in older engines. This idea has been floating around for decades, and there's a small kernel of truth buried in there, but it's mostly outdated. Older engines, especially ones already running worn seals and gaskets, sometimes seem to develop leaks after a switch to synthetic. What was actually happening is that synthetic oil, being thinner and more consistent, could get through gaps and worn seals that thicker, sludge-clogged mineral oil had essentially been plugging up. In a sense, the mineral oil sludge was accidentally hiding a leak that was already there. Modern synthetic oils are formulated with seal conditioners specifically to prevent this. If your engine is in reasonably good shape, switching to synthetic isn't going to create leaks out of nowhere. It might just reveal a seal that was already failing. Now let's talk about modern engines, because this is honestly where the mineral versus synthetic conversation stops being optional. Turbocharged engines, direct injection engines, and high-performance engines run significantly hotter and under far more stress than older naturally aspirated engines did. Turbochargers in particular spin at extremely high speeds and generate intense heat, and that heat gets transferred directly into the oil circulating through the turbo's bearings. Mineral oil simply can't handle that thermal stress reliably over time. It breaks down too fast, and turbo bearings depend on stable, clean oil to survive. That's exactly why almost every manufacturer today either recommends or outright requires synthetic oil for turbocharged and direct injection engines. It's not a marketing preference. It's a mechanical necessity based on how much hotter these engines actually run. So let's talk numbers, because this is where a lot of people get confused about actual value. Mineral oil typically needs to be changed somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 miles, depending on driving conditions. Synthetic oil, because it resists breakdown and contamination so much better, can often go anywhere from 7,500 to 10,000 miles, and in some manufacturer specifications, even further. On paper, synthetic costs more per bottle, sometimes twice as much. But when you actually calculate cost per mile of protection, synthetic frequently comes out even or genuinely cheaper once you factor in fewer oil changes, less wear-related repair risk, and better fuel efficiency from reduced internal friction. The sticker price on the shelf is misleading if you're not looking at the full picture. So does mineral oil still have a place in 2026? Actually, yes, in specific situations. Older, simpler engines with looser tolerances, especially ones built before the 2000s, were literally engineered around the properties of mineral oil. Some classic car owners intentionally stick with mineral oil because it matches the original engineering specifications and seal materials the engine was designed around. If you're driving a low-stress vehicle, doing short trips, minimal mileage, and you're diligent about frequent oil changes, mineral oil can still function adequately. It's not that mineral oil is useless, it's that its use case has narrowed dramatically as engine technology has moved forward. At the end of the day, this comes down to a simple trade-off. Mineral oil is cheaper up front but breaks down faster, protects less consistently across temperature extremes, and demands more frequent changes. Synthetic oil costs more per bottle but delivers more consistent protection, resists breakdown, handles extreme heat and cold significantly better, and ultimately extends the life of components that are expensive to replace. For the vast majority of modern engines being driven today, especially anything turbocharged or direct injection, synthetic isn't really a luxury upgrade anymore. It's what your engine was actually engineered to run on. Next time you're standing in that auto parts aisle staring at two nearly identical-looking bottles, remember what's actually different isn't the color or the price tag. It's what's happening at a molecular level every single time your engine turns over.